most people think meditation is about sitting quietly, closing your eyes, and trying to stop your thoughts. But that's not the truth. In fact, the harder you try to control the mind, the louder it becomes, and maybe that's why so many people give up on meditation. Because no one ever told them what meditation really is. Meditation is not about escaping your thoughts. It's about realizing that you are not the thoughts at all. In this video, you will discover the hidden truth about meditation. Truth that can completely change the way you see your mind, your emotions, and yourself. Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to silence your mind, the louder it becomes? You sit down to meditate, hoping to find peace, but within seconds your thoughts begin racing. Memories appear, worries return, random conversations replay in your head. And almost immediately, you feel like you are failing. But what if that frustration is happening because you were taught the wrong idea about meditation in the first place? Most people believe meditation is about stopping thoughts completely. They think a peaceful mind means an empty mind, so they fight against every thought that appears, trying to force silence through control. But the mind does not become quiet through resistance. In fact, resistance feeds mental noise. The more attention you give to thoughts, the stronger they become. The more you struggle against the mind, the more trapped you feel inside it. This is why so many people walk away from meditation believing it doesn't work for them. They are trying to win a battle that was never meant to be fought. Meditation is not the destruction of thought. It is the discovery of awareness beyond thought. There is a moment, very subtle but deeply powerful, when you stop trying to control the mind and simply observe it. In that moment, something shifts. You begin to notice that thoughts are moving on their own, almost like clouds drifting across the sky. Some are heavy. Some are emotional. Some make no sense at all. But suddenly, you realize something extraordinary. There is a silent presence watching all of it. That silent presence is not disturbed by the thoughts. It does not panic when the mind becomes noisy. It simply observes, calmly, quietly, completely aware. This is the part of meditation no one talks about. The goal was never to create silence by force. The real transformation happens when you recognize the silence that already exists underneath the mental noise. A silence that has always been there, hidden beneath years of overthinking, fear, and emotional conditioning. And once you experience even a few seconds of that inner stillness, your relationship with the mind begins to change. Thoughts no longer feel as powerful. Anxiety loses some of its control. You stop believing every thought that enters your head. Instead of drowning inside the mind, you begin to witness it. That is why true meditation feels less like doing something, and more like waking up from something, not escaping life, but finally seeing it clearly for the first time. What if the reason your mind feels exhausted all the time is because you have been fighting your own thoughts for years? Most people treat negative thoughts like enemies. The moment fear appears, they try to push it away. When anxiety rises, they resist it. When painful memories return, they distract themselves as quickly as possible. It feels natural to fight against inner discomfort. After all, no one wants to sit with fear, sadness, or mental chaos. But the strange truth is this: the more you fight your thoughts, the more power you give them. Think about how the mind works. The moment you tell yourself, "I must stop thinking about this," your attention becomes completely focused on the thought you are trying to avoid. Resistance creates obsession. What you push against does not disappear. It grows stronger in your awareness. This is why people often feel trapped inside cycles of overthinking. They are not only dealing with the original thought, they are also battling against the existence of the thought itself. And that inner conflict creates even more mental noise. The mind feeds on attention. Every time you react emotionally to a thought, you strengthen its influence. Fearful thoughts create fear in the body, and the body's reaction then convinces the mind that the thought must be important. This cycle repeats over and over until anxiety begins to feel like a permanent state of being. But there is another way to experience the mind. A way that does not involve suppression or control. The moment you stop fighting your thoughts and simply observe them, their energy begins to change. A thought loses much of its power when it is seen clearly without resistance. Instead of becoming emotionally entangled in it, you become the observer of it. Imagine sitting quietly and noticing a fearful thought arise. Normally, the mind reacts immediately, Why am I thinking this? I need to stop this. But awareness responds differently. Awareness simply notices. A fearful thought is appearing. That small shift changes everything. Because now, there is space between you and the thought. In that space, you begin to realize that thoughts are temporary events, not absolute truths. They come and go like waves. Some are intense, some are gentle, but none of them define who you are unless you continuously feed them with resistance and identification. True peace does not come from controlling the mind. It comes from no longer being controlled by it. Have you ever sat down to meditate and felt frustrated because your mind would not stop talking? The more you tried to focus, the more distracted you became. The more you tried to force silence, the louder your thoughts felt. For many people, this becomes the reason they quit meditation entirely. They assume they are doing something wrong because they cannot control the mind. But what if the real problem is not the noise inside your head, but the belief that meditation requires you to control it? From a very young age, people are taught that control is the solution to everything. Control your emotions, control your reactions, control your thoughts. So naturally, when they begin meditation, they approach it like another task that needs to be mastered. They sit there trying to force the mind into silence, as if peace can be achieved through pressure, but the mind does not respond well to force. In fact, the more aggressively you try to control it, the more restless it becomes. Thoughts multiply, frustration grows, and meditation slowly turns into another form of mental struggle. This is the hidden misunderstanding that keeps so many people disconnected from true inner stillness. Meditation was never meant to be a war against the mind. True meditation begins the moment you stop trying to control your thoughts and start becoming aware of them instead. That shift may sound small, but it completely changes the experience. Suddenly, you are no longer trapped inside every thought that appears. You become the observer rather than the participant. You notice the mind producing worries, memories, plans, and emotions automatically. And instead of resisting them, you allow them to come and go naturally. In that simple act of observation, something remarkable happens. The thoughts begin to lose their grip over you. Not because they disappear instantly, but because you stop feeding them with tension and resistance. There is a deep intelligence in awareness itself. The moment you stop interfering with the mind, a natural stillness slowly starts to emerge underneath the mental noise. It is subtle at first, a brief moment of silence between thoughts, a feeling of spaciousness, a sense of calm that cannot be explained logically. And, for the first time, you realize that peace was never created by controlling the mind. Peace was always there beneath the mind. The real purpose of meditation is not to become a person with no thoughts. It is to stop being completely identified with every thought you have. Because the moment you stop trying to control the mind, you finally stop being controlled by it. Most people spend their entire lives searching for peace in places where it can never truly be found. They search for it in success, relationships, money, validation, entertainment, and endless distractions. They believe peace is something waiting for them in the future. Something they will finally experience once life becomes perfect. But even after achieving the things they once desired, the mind quickly finds new worries, new fears, and new reasons to feel incomplete. Have you ever wondered why moments of happiness disappear so quickly? Why does the mind always seem to return to stress, overthinking, or emotional heaviness no matter how much external progress is made? Because peace is not something the outside world can permanently provide. What most people call peace is often just temporary psychological comfort. It lasts for a moment, then fades. A successful achievement creates excitement, but soon the mind wants more. A relationship brings emotional security, but eventually fear and attachment appear. External experiences can stimulate pleasure, but they cannot create lasting inner stillness. Real peace is very different. Peace is not something you build through effort, it is something already present beneath the constant activity of the mind. But because attention is always focused outward, on problems, goals, memories, and future expectations, that inner stillness remains unnoticed. The mind is addicted to movement. It constantly searches for the next thing to think about, solve, or worry over. And as long as attention remains trapped inside that endless mental activity, peace feels distant. Not because it is absent, but because it is covered by noise. meditation begins to reveal something extraordinary. Beneath all thinking, there is already a natural state of calm awareness. A quiet presence that exists before every thought and remains after every thought disappears. It has always been there. But most people never notice it, because they are too identified with the voice inside their head. The moment you stop chasing peace externally and become fully present, even for a few seconds, you start to sense this deeper stillness. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive with excitement or emotional intensity. In fact, it feels strangely simple. Almost like returning to something familiar that was forgotten long ago. And this is the truth no one talks about. You do not create peace through effort, you uncover it by removing the layers of mental noise hiding it. Every moment of awareness weakens the illusion that fulfillment exists somewhere outside of you. Slowly, the need to constantly escape the present begins to disappear. You stop searching so desperately because you realize the peace you were looking for was never absent, it was simply buried underneath years of unconscious thinking. What if the voice inside your head is not actually who you are? For most people, this question feels strange at first because they have spent their entire lives identifying with their thoughts. Every opinion, every fear, every memory, every inner conversation feels deeply personal. The mind speaks constantly, and because that voice is always present, people naturally assume it represents their true self. But, if you observe carefully, something remarkable begins to reveal itself. The voice in your head never truly stops. It comments on everything. It judges situations, replays the past, worries about the future, compares, criticizes, complains, and creates endless mental stories. Sometimes it speaks with fear, sometimes with anger, sometimes with doubt, and most of the time, this inner dialogue runs automatically, without conscious awareness. The problem is not that thoughts exist. The problem, people become completely identified with them. They believe every thought is true simply because it appears in the mind. And once that happens, the mind begins controlling emotional experience. A single negative thought can ruin an entire day. One fearful idea can create anxiety in the body within seconds. One memory can pull someone back into emotional pain that no longer exists in the present moment. But here is the deeper truth most people never notice. If you can observe the voice in your head, then you cannot be the voice itself. There is something within you that is aware of the thinking. A silent presence that notices thoughts appearing and disappearing. That awareness is always here, even when the mind becomes chaotic. It listens without judgment. It observes without reacting. And unlike thoughts, it remains unchanged. This realization changes the entire relationship you have with your mind. Instead of being trapped inside every thought, you begin to witness thoughts from a distance. Fear may still appear, but you no longer become fear. Anger may arise, but you no longer lose yourself completely inside it. Thoughts continue moving, but your sense of identity starts shifting away from mental noise and toward awareness itself. This is why meditation feels so transformative for many people. Not because it magically removes all thoughts, but because it creates moments where awareness becomes calm, stronger than unconscious thinking. For the first time, you begin to experience the difference between thinking and awareness. And in that space, there is freedom, because awareness is naturally calm. It does not need to force peace into existence. It already exists beneath the noise of the mind. The more connected you become to that awareness, the less power thoughts have over your emotional state. The voice inside your head may continue speaking, but you finally realize something life-changing. You are not the voice. You are the one listening to it. Why do so many people avoid being completely alone with themselves? Why is silence uncomfortable for so many minds? The moment there are no distractions, no phone, no music, no conversations, no entertainment, something strange begins to happen. Thoughts become louder. Emotions rise to the surface. Restlessness appears. And for many people, this silence feels almost unbearable. That is why modern life is filled with constant distraction. People stay busy, not only because they have responsibilities, but because distraction protects them from facing what is happening inside. Noise becomes an escape from self-awareness. But healing does not begin in distraction. It begins in stillness. Most emotional pain remains unresolved because it is constantly avoided. The mind becomes skilled at escaping discomfort through stimulation, endless scrolling, overworking, chasing validation, or filling every moment with external noise. Yet no matter how many distractions are created, unresolved emotions continue existing beneath the surface, and eventually, they return. This is why sitting alone with yourself can feel so intense at first. When external distractions disappear, the mind no longer has places to hide. Suppressed emotions, fears, insecurities, and old memories begin to surface into awareness. Many people immediately assume something is wrong because meditation suddenly makes them feel emotional or restless. But in reality, this is often the beginning of real healing. For years, the mind may have been carrying emotional weight unconsciously. Meditation simply creates enough silence for you to finally notice what was already there. And although this process can feel uncomfortable, it is deeply transformative, because the moment you stop running away from yourself, something powerful begins to happen. You start observing your emotions instead of being consumed. You begin noticing how thoughts trigger emotional reactions in the body. You become aware of patterns that were controlling you unconsciously for years. And through awareness, those patterns slowly begin losing their power. Healing is not created by forcing yourself to feel positive. It happens when you allow yourself to fully experience the present moment without resistance. There is something profoundly freeing about sitting quietly with yourself and realizing you do not need to escape your own mind anymore. The silence that once felt uncomfortable slowly becomes peaceful. The emotions that once felt overwhelming begin to soften. And the mind that constantly demanded distraction becomes quieter, not because you forced it into silence, because awareness brought light into places that had been hidden for too long. The deepest healing does not come from becoming someone new. It comes from finally meeting yourself without fear, without distraction, and without the need to run away. Maybe meditation was never about escaping the mind. Maybe it was about finally understanding it. The thoughts may continue, emotions may still rise and fall. Now, you can see them without losing yourself inside them. And in that awareness, you discover a peace that was always within you.